What's good, y'all? My name is Lanny Smith. I'm the founder of Actively Black, and I'm here with the one and only AI, Bubba Chuck, the answer. Before we get started, man, I want to ask you first, where did Bubba Chuck come from? Where did that name come from? Who gave you that nickname?
It's embarrassing. It's the honest truth. I had an uncle named Bubba and one named Chuck, and they was arguing over my nickname. And my mom said, name him Bubba Chuck. Very simple.
All right. You know, everybody knows you as the answer. Who gave you that nickname? When did that first come about?
Came from growing up, playground, somebody score, you know what I mean? I always answered, you know what I mean? I'm down the other end. If you played a boxing one, you played man to man, whatever junk defense you had, I had to answer for it. So the name just stuck.
I gotta tell you, man, for me, man, it's crazy to sit here in front of you, man, having this conversation. You know, growing up, it was you and MJ. Grew my hair out to get braids. I was wearing the sleeve, but my jersey number was number 23. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But there was this difference. It was like Jordan almost seemed like mythical. You know what I'm saying? But for you, it was like one of us, seeing one of us make it. So it was like obtainable. It seemed like it was something that we could reach out and touch. And it's funny, you know, when I say like MJ almost not real. I remember your Hall of Fame speech. You talked about the first time you stepped on the court with him, and you was like, man, he was wearing Jordans.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I thought that was so funny. How was that for you to see somebody in that light that you grew up yourself idolizing, and then being able to step on the court?
It you know, everything about that speech was authentic. The whole speech was, but when it came to him, it was real because that was the experience that I had. Like, he didn't look real to me. I really did see his aura. You know what I mean? You know, that was my hero, childhood hero growing up. And he still is, you know what I mean? I still feel the same way every time I see him, still uncomfortable in a sense. Still starstruck, you know what I mean? Out of all the people, you know, in my life. And I never got to meet Michael Jackson, you know what I mean? But those were my heroes, him and Michael Jackson.
To go from that guy to becoming a guy who's in a position where people look at you that way, you know what I'm saying? Like, man, this ain't real. This AI. You know, are you aware of that lasting impact that you've had on the next generation?
Yeah, and it helps me help other people. I understand how I felt when it came to Mike, and now that, you know, younger guys feel like that about me, you know, I try my best to make them comfortable and help them feel comfortable around me.
Yeah.
Because, you know what I mean, I know how I am when I get around Mike, and I know how difficult it can be. So, you know, I'm a down-to-earth person anyway. You know what I mean? I'm the people's champ anyway, so it's easy for me, you know what I mean, to sit amongst, you know what I mean, the people from the bottom to the top. I walk in any room, and regardless who in there, I'm me. You know what I mean? I treat the you know, workers like I treat the bosses.
It's funny when you say, you know, when you say the people's champ, it's really like that, because it's not just the basketball players, it's not just the guys. Funny story, when you called me a couple weeks ago, I missed your call and called you right back. I was in Vegas for NBA Summer League, and I was actually getting a massage when you first called, and the masseuse, she was talking to me a little too much when I was getting my massage. She was like, are you an NBA player? Are you a basketball player? I was like, nah. I don't do nothing with the NBA, you know what I'm saying? And then when my massage was ending, you was calling. She picked up my phone and handed it to me. She's like, Allen Iverson is calling. And
that's crazy.
It was crazy. She started to treat me differently because you was calling me, you know what I'm saying? So that impact that you have, man, is incredible, man. And it's you see it across all generations and all different type of people.
For sure.
But the reason we here, the reason why I'm able to sit here in front of you and have this conversation is because of the collab that we got coming out, man. And when ABG first reached out to me about this collab, they said, now listen, Allen's gonna have to get a green light on this. He gonna have to say, yes, I wanna do this. And so what was it for you about Actively Black that, you know, you felt was like, yeah, I wanna do this, and to give it the green light?
It was the vision, you know what I mean? And, you know, by it being black owned, then obviously that was gonna grab my attention from the jump.
Yeah.
What took it over the top is when me and you spoke. That was it, you know what I mean? That was the That was icing on the cake for me. I think that the dopest part about our conversation is we felt the most important thing was to make it as authentic as possible. 100%. You know what I mean? If it's 100% authentic, we can't go wrong. It's a lot of guys just like us out there. There's a lot of authentic people out here in this world, and they're waiting for something like this.
Without even knowing it, man, the way that you've carried yourself, the way that you played, how much that impacted even me starting Actively Black and with it, and how we stand for something, right? And we don't compromise on that. And being authentic in who we are, I mean, I turned down multi-million-dollar deals, you know what I'm saying, because they wanted us to change how we were carrying the brand. And I told them I'm not compromising for no amount of money, you know what I'm saying? And so it was dope to be able to connect with you and for you to feel that authenticity. And so I want to do this interview and do it based on, you know, the signature move that everybody knows you for, the crossover, but, you know, not in the literal sense, right? So I got 7 questions about 7 of your biggest crossovers in your life. First and foremost, we know that you were a 2-sport athlete growing up. Well, more than that, but, you know, we know about football and basketball. Right. Normally, when you hear about the 2-sport guys, you hear Bo Jackson, you hear Deion Sanders, but you were literally ranked #1 in football and basketball coming up. Can you talk about that first love of football and then how you crossed over into basketball?
You know, that was my first love. Basketball came later on in life. You know, I was always a football player. You know, and I remember the first time that I played basketball, I came home from school and my mom was like, "You going to basketball practice today?" And I was like, "Playing no basketball. Basketball's soft." You know what I mean? So I cried, kicking, scratching everything out of the door. Her and my coach just getting me out of there, throwing me in the van. I got to practice and I seen all the guys that were on my football team trying out for the basketball team. So I got out of there and got home. Long story short, I loved it. You know what I mean? I thank my mom, and I've been playing it. I've been playing it ever since.
Was it a conscious decision that, like, okay, I'm gonna do basketball, like this is gonna be my thing, or?
I loved it because it was another sport, and it was something that, you know, other guys on my football team were trying. You know, guys that I respected on the football team, they were out there trying it. You know what I mean? It was new to me. But then when I seen Mike, that's when I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do.
Speaking of Mike, it's a great transition, but a different Mike who's also, you know, from your area, from Virginia, who was also, you know, they at first they considered him too small in football. When you think about Mike Vick and what he was able to accomplish on the football field, do you ever think about, man, if I had stuck with football, where would that have taken me, or how far I could have gotten?
And then you asked me that in the initial question. I just didn't answer it. I didn't really choose basketball. It was like my only option, like, because I was recruited by everybody in the country in both sports. And then I got in trouble in high school, and then when I got out, everybody that was recruiting me, they stopped recruiting me, and in both sports. And my mom went up to Georgetown and begged Coach to save my life, gave me an opportunity, and, you know, I made the best of it.
That situation, you know what I'm saying, that was actually the next crossover that I wanted to ask you about. You know, when you think about being black in America, when you think about what that means as far as the judicial system, law enforcement, and how they've handled, you know, especially black men, you know what I'm saying? When you think about the racial lines that was crossed over that impacted how that case went, how do you feel like, you know, you being a black man, how do you feel like that impacted how that case went?
You know what I mean? That had everything to do with it. You know, I was definitely being railroaded. You know what I mean? Everybody knew it. You know what I mean? Obviously, for the governor to grant me clemency, then obviously, you know, everybody knew it was an injustice. That's why you had so many people down there marching and, you know, having all these different meetings, and NAACP coming in and visiting me while I was in jail. Everybody knew that it was wrong. You know what I mean? I think they were trying to, you know, destroy God's plan. And that's something that you know, no matter what, you can't do it. I think the most important thing in my situation, and I think what Coach Thompson used to tell me that he admired me so much for is the fact that I never complained. Like once I got the opportunity, what was the use of dwelling on what happened to me? Like I got a chance now.
Right.
You know what I mean? God gave me another chance, and what good is it gonna do for me to keep whining and complaining about what happened? It happened. I overcame it. God blessed me. Coach gave me a chance, and here we go. So I think a lot of lessons were learned from that situation, not just from it being an injustice. It showed a lot of the little dudes from around my way, boys and girls, that, you could fall down and get back up.
That mentality actually leads to the third crossover I want to talk to you about. A lot of people don't even realize. You think about going from being the #1 player in high school to having this situation where you were incarcerated, to going to Georgetown, to becoming the #1 overall pick in the NBA draft. This all happened in a span of like 4 years.
Right.
So when you think about that crossover from all of those changes that happened in a span of 4 years, you know what I'm saying? And I don't think people have looked at it with that type of perspective. When they had the judgment and the criticisms of you early on in your career, it was like, man, think of any 17, 18, 19-year-old kid who goes through that type of transition in a span of 4 years. What was it about your mentality? What was it about?
Because the hard part was over. Being incarcerated, being in there, being around, men that's twice my age, you know what I mean? Like I think one of the greatest things about being locked up, and one of the positive things that happened to me in there was the support that I got from the guys that were in there. You know what I mean? Like I was 17, 18 years old, so I was trying to, get around the guys my age and, do some of the things that they were doing in there and trying to be around them. And the older guys were like, nah, man, you in here, but this ain't it, man. It ain't over. You know what I mean? You're gonna get out of here one day and you're gonna fulfill your dream. So the support was there from guys locked up. Like these guys were criminals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, they were in there supporting me and made sure, that I was protected in there, that I was all right, that I got out of there and I was cool. My mentality was once I get out of here, everything else is peaches and cream.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And for me to say that, here and there I didn't have my problems, because I did, you know what I mean? But, you put me on the dance floor after putting me what you put me through, God bless whoever trying to guard me.
Yeah. Man, one of the things that Actively Black does, man, we sponsor this program called Between the Lines, man. Shout out to Lamont Torrey, one of the Actively Black team members. We go inside of prisons and we do basketball camps and we play with the guys, man, and it really brings guys' guards down for us to be able to connect with them and talk to them and connect with them, man. So if ever you feel comfortable, man, that's something you wanna do and you wanna roll with us, man, you definitely welcome. Because we found so many stories similar to yours where it's like, either guys who were railroaded or who made some early mistakes young, you know what I'm saying, and they just need that motivation to keep their hope the same way that you did, man. So let's go to the next crossover. I want to talk about hip hop a little bit. You and hip hop. So hip hop is turning 50 this year. You just turned 48.
Yeah.
So you pretty much grew up with hip hop.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And so when I think about the early days of hip hop, right, it was seen as this, rebellious, young thing. People thought it was a fad, that it wasn't gonna stay around. And now you look up and it's so mainstream, mainstream commercials.
Yeah.
They have break dance competitions in Taiwan and Korea and all over Asia. So you think about how global hip hop has become. And so when I think about your career, it's almost like it paralleled the same thing with hip hop. Like you came in as young upstart that thought you was rebellious, and then you end up having this impact globally across the world, man. How do you feel about hip hop itself, and then also how synonymous you have become with like growing not only the game but also hip hop within the game?
I think hip hop is just love. To me, that's what it represents, love. But most importantly, an expression of you being yourself and feeling like it's cool to be you. You know, I always say, what's wrong with being you? Everybody else is taking up. You know, when I think about the game, when I think about the dress code and all that, when they put that in, when, you know, it wasn't a big deal when I was wearing what I was wearing, but when I started wearing what I was wearing, everybody else felt like, oh, damn, well, we've been wanting to dress like we wanted to dress.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
We thought we couldn't do it. And all I was doing, it had nothing to do with being a thug or anything like that. You know, I dressed the way my guys from my neighborhood dressed. When I went to the court, to the playground, I didn't wear a suit to the playground. You know what I mean? And a guy like me, after I finished playing a game, we probably was going to get something to eat and going to the club or something. But once I started dressing the way I dressed, then everybody else started doing it, and then that's when it was like, oh, this out of control.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, you know, hip hop is just expressing yourself, man, just being who you are and being comfortable with being you. You know what I mean? Just being comfortable in your own skin. I just think I had a big impact on that because people never seen that on that stage.
Right.
You know what I mean? On the you know, NBA level, it was always shirt and tie. And, you know, where I'm from, you know, as bad as it may sound, you know, only time I used to really wear a suit is when I was going to a funeral. You know what I mean? Or, you know, on a positive level, you know, to church.
No, that impact has been felt. I mean, the tunnel walk is now the runway.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
See, I wish they had stuff like that when I played.
Man.
You know, why would you have a dress code when you got all these different personalities, you got all these different games? You know what I mean? Nobody play the same, so why should everybody dress the same?
Right.
Let people be free and feel good about who they are. You might not like it, you might not like the outfit, but you should feel good about that person feeling good about themselves to be able to want to wear whatever they want to wear.
Especially in a league that markets individual players
Absolutely.
to build those
There you
brands.
go.
Why would you not want them to be?
Couldn't have said it better.
For whatever reason, hip hop and basketball had this relationship, had this connection.
Yes.
Man. Hoopers want to be rappers, and rappers want to be hoopers. So one, what do you think is that link between hip hop and basketball?
I think, you know, a lot of hip hop comes from the inner city, and what everybody do in the inner city, man. Everybody hoop. Everybody. And I mean, just hip hop and basketball is like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, they just go together.
Who's in Allen Iverson's top 5 rappers?
That's hard, because I can keep going on, and I don't want to disrespect
No disrespect.
nobody. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, cause the list, come on, man. I mean, so much great time. It's guys, young guys out now that I'm big fans of, like, that just came out. You know what I mean? Obviously, I love the guys that I grew up off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I could say those guys first and foremost. But then, you know, they gonna always have something special in my heart because
that's who you grew up
that's
with.
who I gravitated to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then you got all these other guys that, since I've, you know, been adapted to hip hop, you know what I mean? Like, you got Drake come out, he might be the greatest rapper ever. You know what I mean? And he's, you know, he's been around like 10 years now.
Yeah.
But still, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, he's new. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's so many other guys that just crazy talented. It's just like, matter of fact, you talked about basketball and rap.
Yep.
It's the same thing when you put both of them together. Like, you can talk about the old school, you can talk about the new dudes. All these great dudes, you got Steph,
Yep.
you know what I mean, the greatest shooter in the world. But then you got all these Reggie Miller, and you got Ray Allen and all these dudes. Then you got Michael Jordan back then. Then here come LeBron and Kobe. Just keep getting better and better and better. You know what I mean? You think about Pac and Big. Then now you got,
Just keep you bugged.
you know, Drake and, you know what I mean, all these.
Baby, you got all
Lil Baby,
Yep.
all these other guys, man, you know what I mean? This young generation will argue that this generation is better than the old.
Same
Just
thing
like,
we do with hooping.
just like right now, you know what I mean? People will say, instead of Mike, they'll say LeBron. That's this generation. I think the great part about it, and what make it awesome and make the talent what it is that it's a debate.
I came out the same year. LeBron, I remember playing against him in the 7th grade AAU Nationals, you know what I'm saying? So to be in that class and see somebody now even being mentioned for it to be a debate is crazy, because growing up, I never thought anybody would even be mentioned with Mike, you know what I'm saying? So,
Kobe, I mean.
Yeah. So along those lines, the tagline for Actively Black is "There's greatness in our DNA," right?
Absolutely.
So when you think about the guys today that's playing today, who's got Allen Iverson DNA in their game? Who would you say are some guys that you look at and it's like, okay, I recognize that killer?
Kevin Durant, Westbrook, Ja Morant. And we just going off sheer, it's me.
Yeah.
It's all about me.
Yeah.
Steph, definitely Steph. That's my favorite player. It's a lot of killers, man. Giannis is a killer. Luka is a killer. Joker is a killer in a subtle, you know.
Oh, he's a psycho.
He's a killer. He's a killer, but he's a smooth criminal. So I see it all in a lot of guys. But like I said, you see what Kobe did to so many guys. Like if you talk to guys, they're gonna tell you how Kobe was their guy, because he, you know, you sit and watch him when you're younger and you're like, damn, you know what I mean? Like this dude is a straight, he coming for your juggler. Like he's not playing. And every game is the same way. He's coming, you know what I mean? Like, that's why I like certain players.
Steph's one of my favorite players, you know what I'm saying? And a business partner and a friend. I know the admiration that he has for you, you know what I'm saying? And one of the things that we've talked about is how open you've been in showing your admiration for him and the other young guys, which isn't something that happens all the time with the older players. Sometimes some older players can't do it, but you show that love.
Didn't happen with me. Guys were saying anything about me, positive or negative. I was listening, you know what I mean? Because y'all my heroes. Y'all paved the way. Y'all made it an opportunity, or gave an opportunity for me to get here on this stage with y'all. When I got the cold shoulder from a lot of other guys, you know, because they knew I was coming, or because they ain't like the way I was coming. You know what I mean? And I always felt like I would never be like that to these guys.
You brought up Drake, and he has this line that means something to me, and he mentions you. He says, and that's around the time that your idols become your rivals. Make friends with Mike, but gotta AI him for your survival. So that leads to the next crossover, which I know you've talked about a lot, but the crossover against MJ. Can you just talk about your mentality? And even though you came into this thing looking at him as somebody that was, you know, the GOAT to you, when you stepped in between those lines, that didn't matter. So can you just talk about your mentality from that famous crossover against Michael Jordan?
Definitely. That was like being a casualty of war, basically. You know what I mean? And at the same time, it was like one of those things where, like, I talked to my friends about it, and they used to ask me, like, Chuck, you know, you gonna try your move on Mike? You know, man, I was like, yeah, if I get the opportunity, you know what I mean? I'm gonna see if it worked on the best that ever did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when the opportunity presented itself, I was like, here we go. You know what I mean? Let me see what it is. And I didn't shy away from it or anything. A lot of guys I be on the court with are my homeboys. You know what I mean? But as soon as the ball go in the air, you just go into kill mode.
Oh yeah, I mean, watching you and Kobe go at it was like, there was no give with either one of y'all. You could tell there was mutual respect and admiration.
Absolutely.
But when y'all stepped on the court, it is what it is.
Time to dance.
And you know, when I think about the parallels, when I think about Actively Black, right? I look at Nike like Michael Jordan. I look at Actively Black like Allen Iverson. You know what I'm saying?
Appreciate that.
I grew up wearing J's, you know what I'm saying, wearing Nike, but now I'm in a space where, you know, not gonna say we competition, but it is what it is, you know what I'm saying? So if we gotta be Allen Iverson, that's who we gonna be, you know what I'm saying? So
that's dope.
The next crossover that I want to talk to you about is the crossover into life after basketball. And, you know, I know for me, we talked about this before, I signed with Sacramento Kings in 2009, and 33 days after signing my first NBA contract, a guy fell into my knee, tore my knee up, had 2 microfracture surgeries, and my career was over with just like that in 33 days. So that transition, man, I struggled, man. The depression, the identity crisis. I mean, I didn't know who I was outside of Lanny Smith that played basketball. You know what I'm saying? For you, how has that transition been mentally, emotionally, spiritually?
You had that fear, but right before I announced, I knew I was ready. Like I was at the point where I was like, I was tired, I was frustrated, I was ready. Like I told my manager, like, it's time. Just dealing with the media every day and different situations of my role on teams. And I remember a situation where I was on the court and my daughter was sick. For the first time in my career, somebody was shooting a free throw and I was in the backcourt or whatever, thinking about my daughter. I was gone. I wasn't even in the arena. You know what I mean? I was thinking about my daughter. And right then, I was like, oh yeah, it's time to go. I wasn't being fair to myself, my teammates, fans, the game, because my focus usually always is on that. Like that was my safe haven. You know, for those 2 hours in the day, that's all I thought was basketball. And then right then I was like, okay, yeah, it's time. And the transition was, I would never say at any point was it difficult. It was different. You know what I mean? I was so used to a routine. I was so used to playing, you know what I mean? And then I started to watch games. And then that's when it kind of got uncomfortable a little bit, because I'm like, you get that itch, but it's like you fighting it off mentally, you know, okay, yeah, you want to play, but you're going to have to deal with this and you're going to have to deal with that. Then it was like, nah, hell no. Then I started, you know, doing my daddy duties and taking them to school and picking them up and going to meetings and, you know, taking them to the doctors and the dentist and all of that stuff. And it was like, yeah, this is dope. You start doing certain things work-wise, and then you get more involved in it to whereas you wasn't involved with it then. You know, a lot of things when it came to my apparel and my shoes and stuff like that at Reebok, they're bringing it to me like, yeah, you know, okay, cool. You know what I mean? Then after a while, it was like, no, I'm going in there, I'm designing my own stuff. No, I'll take that back, put this, add this to it, you know, and just getting into a lot of things, I started to look at it like, damn, you know, I'm waking up, you know, all throughout the week and don't nothing hurt. You know what I'm saying? I'm used to during the week, like figuring like, man, how the hell am I gonna play tomorrow? You know what I mean? Because I'm beat up, you know, this broke and that's sprung and this is bruised, and you know what I mean? After a while, I was like, damn, like my body don't even hurt. Just start enjoying it, man. Just more and more time with your family and, you know, doing more things that you were, you know, weren't able to do when you played. Then after a while, it's gone so long, then you're so used to it, and you at that age where you know you can't play no more, then it just evaporates.
You good. Yeah, so that leads to the last crossover I want to talk about is the crossover between eras, right? So when you hear that debate about who could have played in which era, a lot of time, you know, you hear they talk about MJ, you hear about Bron. Could he be as successful if he played in the 80s?
What?
He, oh yeah. Which is ridiculous to debate.
Matter of fact, I did hear that. I did hear that one time.
Especially
because of the physicality.
Exactly. That's what they try to say, right? But when I think about you and your game, right, and we think about the different eras, and this is no disrespect to Bob Cousy and them, but we know they couldn't hold you.
I understand where you're going.
You know what I'm saying? We got to see in the 80s, we got to see Zeke, we got to see Isaiah Thomas, a smaller guard who was able to dominate in one of the most physical eras, right? And so knowing how you played, we know you could have done your thing in the 80s. We saw you in the 90s and the 2000s. When you look at the game now, right, where you can't hand check, how open it is, especially for guards, right, with the ball in their hand, and the speed of the game, the increased pace. You know, you leading the league in scoring in the 90s. How do you think you would do in today's game? And do you ever think about that?
I never think about it until people bring it up, and then, you know, people talk about how I would dominate this era so much. And the only reason that I think like, well, I agree, is because the spacing. You know what I mean? It's so much space into it. I already know. I don't think about the guy that's guarding me. You know what I mean?
About help.
I'm thinking, because I'm looking at everybody else. I'm not looking at or thinking about the guy. I know I'm getting by that guy.
Yeah.
When you talked about the scoring title and stuff like that, like what bothered me, and I would never use the word or feel like I lost any type of respect for the NBA because I love it. You know what I mean? I love the commissioner we have now. Love David Stern, may he rest in peace. But it really frustrated me, you know, after 4 scoring titles and, you know, being able to do what I did offensively. It bothered me when they put the zone.
The zone.
And because, you know, when you're in college, like I had my teammates, you know, they'd be like, man, Chuck, you know they can't run boxing one on you. They can't run 1-3-1s and no 2-3s on you. You know they got to play you head up. You know what I mean? So who gonna be able to guard you? And I felt like that, like, yo, you know what I mean? It's on. You know what I mean? And then that's how I was in the beginning. I had my way. Then they put the zone in. I think they implemented it in there
for you.
Hey,
let's just keep it real.
Call a spade. And I just felt like, you know, with them having those gimmick defenses and putting the zone back in the league, you putting people on the floor that might not generally be on the floor. You're trying to hide somebody. You know what I mean? It's like a kind of like a cheat code to let, you know, somebody just sit there and play an area instead of guarding a man. I feel like if you play man to man, then yeah, I could do anything out there in today's game. But I don't think in today's game they would let me, you know, play with it being wide open like that. I think it'll be a lot of zones.
Man, well, I appreciate your time, man. But lastly, before I let you get out of here, man, they say we got to start, you know, giving our people their flowers while they could still smell them, man. And we want to give you your flowers first and foremost. So we make sure that
that's dope.
Make sure that we give you your flowers, man. And I wanna tell you, and it's important for me to tell you this. As a black man to black man, it's important for me to tell you that, you know, you're so worthy, you're so valuable to us. You know, it says the people's champ on there, man.
Right. That's crazy. That's crazy.
You said that earlier.
That's crazy.
It's crazy, man.
That's crazy.
That's who you are to us, man. And you don't have to. You ain't got to score another bucket. You ain't got to cross nobody else over for that to remain that way, man. And so,
appreciate it.
I just want to make sure you know we love you, man, and we appreciate everything you've done, man, for us, for the game, everything, man. So,
man,
appreciate you.
Appreciate you, baby. Thank you. Yeah, man. Yes, sir.